Well, hey, welcome to the Military Minute Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Jennings. Thanks for joining us today. Just before the show, Scott and I were talking a little bit here. I understand we got an interesting email from a listener this week.
We do, Mike. We're just going to call him, for the sake of the show, Sleepless in San Diego. But he wrote in, mentioned that he's been anxious about transitioning out of the military into the workforce. Loves the show, and he says that you've been providing a lot of help as he prepares for this major change in his life. And so we just want to thank him for that comment.
Yeah, and certainly we do appreciate that. So, Sleepless, if you're listening to this podcast or watching us, thanks for the email. And what you're talking about there is something that we find to be a common experience among military veterans transitioning off of active duty. We go through so much training to prepare us for everything that we're going to experience or everything that we need to know. There's somebody to help us along the way. So either we're being trained for the mission that we're supposed to go accomplish, or we're being walked through the process of taking care of our payroll, dealing with our chits that we file, or anything else that relates to the military life. But when it comes to getting out, all of a sudden you feel like you're on an island by yourself. And so the two things that we hear so frequently that cause people fear and anxiety is, first of all, the uncertainty around the job search process. That process of not really knowing where you're going to go to work, exactly how you're going to fit, what the company's going to be. So whether you're staying, whether you are where you are, whether you're going back to your hometown or you're going someplace else, all of that uncertainty around the job search process and acquisition of a job process is a source of a lot of fear and anxiety. The second part of this is it's money. You know, we come into the service, most of us, with almost nothing. Usually we show up with ourselves. Most of us come into the service right out of high school, or if you're an officer, you know, right out of college. And you enter the service usually fairly unencumbered, but by the time you leave, you've got obligations, real obligations. And the truth of the matter is, the service pays pretty well these days compared to what your civilian peers have done through the first 5 years of their professional lives. So when it comes to executing this process, the connection to the fear of the job is really the fear of not having money or not having enough money to do what you want to do to support the lifestyle that you have been used to living. And these are important considerations when it comes to the transition process. The real trick in the whole thing is how do we manage our emotions through this process? The job search process is an objective challenge. It is what it is. We know it's part of the process. The monetary situation is an objective situation. We know what it is. So how do we manage our emotions through this? And so what I have found through my career in doing this is that many of the transitioning veterans that we work with will go through an emotional process that goes somewhat like this. When we first talk to them prior to their starting an active search for their new career, because they're more than 90 days out, usually what we encounter is that we encounter the fear of the money, we encounter the anxiety over the job, and behind that, there's a little bit of hope that what it is that they're going to find is better than what they had on active duty. And as we start working them into the process at the 90-day mark or sometimes shortly thereafter, companies start becoming interested in them. People start talking to them specifically about jobs. And if there gets to be some activity in there, what will start to happen is that arrogance actually starts to kick in, because the fear is replaced with another strong emotion, and that's greed and sometimes overconfidence. And what ends up happening there is that over time, some of that arrogance actually causes the individual to push off other opportunities because they think, oh, okay, I got this. Everything is okay. And they misunderstand that somebody introducing a job opportunity to them, or somebody tells them, well, hey, my company will hire you, just have to meet with them. That is not the equivalent of a job offer. You do not have a job offer until you have gone through the interviewing process. You've been evaluated, you've been vetted, somebody has tendered you an offer that has a salary associated with it, a start date, and almost always some type of pre-employment process. So then what happens is with this arrogance at this point is that the person finds themselves at about the 30 to 45 day mark now in a full-on panic because there is no job that's out there. They're closing in on their date, and that emotionally drives them to accept the first job that is offered to them because now they're worried about supporting their habit of eating and living indoors. Interestingly enough, by the time we get down to the end part of this process, on the final 15 days and in, there is certainly a sense of calm and almost a bit of resolution to the fact that, you know what, I'm not going to have what I'm looking for here right away, so I'm going to have to prepare for the long haul. So that idea that they're going to get to this point has already caused them to start changing their mindset and realizing they need to knuckle down and get after it. So the key to all of this and managing the emotions really comes down to needing to have a plan. You can make a choice to either take the time to do your homework and make this plan for the transition, or you can choose to kind of ride it in without doing any pre-work on it or preparing your mind or preparing your emotions. That is a choice that you individually have to make. What you don't get to choose is what the consequences are of those decisions. We would never go into a military operation without a lot of detailed planning. Because in military operations, we understand that even the best laid plans on a military operation are still confounded by the environment and by the enemy and everything else that comes in contact with us. But the plan gives us a framework to base our operation off of. It gives us the stability of knowing that if one part of the plan doesn't work, we know that coming around to it, we can re-engage in other parts of the plan and adjust to those uncertainties. And from that, in our military operations, we get a sense of calm that ultimately the mission will succeed. And the same thing happens here with your current career transition. When you take the time to actually go through this and think and plan and do a little homework, then you're setting your operation up for success, and then your emotions can become stable as you go through the process and be very measured in how you're pursuing things. And if you do that, Sleepless in San Diego, you have nothing to worry about, because as we're going to talk about in upcoming episodes, we're going to talk about a little bit about why every military member is valuable to a civilian employer and what it is that they really care about with military veterans compared to the people they see in from other types of backgrounds. So thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Jennings. This is the Military Minute Podcast. If you want more information on this, check out our other episodes. Also, check out my new book, On Target, On Time, Precision Guidance for the Military to Civilian Transition. So have a great day. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining the Military Minute. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you're notified when a new episode is released. Is there a topic or conversation you want discussed here on the show? Send it to me at scott.cunningham@militaryminute.us.